This is Laborc, and it is so nice to have you here. These are the paints you need. You're going to need sunny skin tone. Alright guys, let's start with the magnificent red scarf he has. I start applying burnt red and leave the recesses of the folds black. This way the scarf will look very nice and crispy. I'm using the painted version of the miniature by Seb Levine as a reference for the highlights, but I attached the highlight reference pictures to the Patreon post. I thinned down the paint to a glaze consistency to glaze over the extreme shadows. This will ensure that the recesses that face up won't end up black and creating an unrealistic dark shadow. We also paint the gloves with this color. Then I use the Evil Sun Scarlet that you guys must have seen. I used this color a couple of times now. Very rich and saturated red with great coverage, so I highly recommend it. I only apply this color over the 50% of the surface of the folds that face up. If a fold faces down, I do not go further with my brush, so the shadows can benefit from these dark and deep shadows that burnt red is providing. Let's mix some sunny skin tone to the Evil Sun Scarlet to push the contrast and make this scarf look silky smooth like Granny's butt cheek. Catch those raised folds with a thin consistency and blend in this color with some glazing, moving the paint from the darker to the brighter parts. And don't forget to wipe off the excess from your brush on a paper towel or I will slap on your tiny hand. Guys, do you remember the first time you glazed? It's such a magical moment. It's like the first time when you wash Granny's back. At first you don't know how to start because it feels weird, but later it feels more and more right. Add a little bit more sunny skin tone to the mix and reduce the highlight areas more. This will create a very high contrast, lovely silk scarf. Try to look out for the crevices. As you can see, Papa Laborc made a little mistake there, but you can fix the recesses with the burnt red or with the paint you used instead of burnt red. Verberer's red is a great alternate choice, by the way. It's time for the furry collar and his vest. Try to apply the paint in a thicker consistency and leave some recesses black so we can have a high contrast base on the furry parts and follow the radial pattern of the fur with your brush strokes. For the vest, use a little bit thinner consistency, so we apply the color layer by layer. I try to use more of this Ruben Martinez style to just use layering for the midtones, and for this vest it works very well. Apply less paint on the lower part of the vest and try to leave a black line between the binding. And most importantly, watch out for the red scarf or I will slap on your tiny hand. Now mix some sunny skin tone to Earl Grey and highlight the parts that face up. It's a thinner consistency again, and on the furry parts, try to highlight more around the face and less around the shoulders to enhance our focal point. I use rhinox hide for the trousers, belt, pouch and wood part of the pistol with the base layer consistency. For the highlights of those parts, I use flat brown. It's a quite good neutral brown color. Try to leave the crevices on the belt darker to have extra detail on the pouch and trousers. Apply the paint in spots to add some texture. You don't need to be super precise with it, so don't worry about it too much. On the pistol, use a little bit thicker consistency and try to paint some lines to create a wood grain-like texture. Now, let's add some sunny skin tone. Yep guys, we are going to use sunny skin tone everywhere for highlights. It's going to desaturate most of the paints, but desaturated colors work very well for this game. Now try to be a bit more precise with the stippling on the pouch and the trousers to add some more finer details and imitate some wear and tear on those parts. If you feel like your lines and spots become too thick or large, just go back with rhinox hide to fix them and make them thinner or smaller. To push the contrast more, we add a little bit more sunny skin tone to the mix and further reduce the highlight areas. If you feel like the surface is a bit too rough, don't be afraid to use some glazes. There is only one thing to be afraid of, and that is me, slapping on your tiny hand. To have a little bit different color for the gloves, I mixed the recently used highlight color to burnt red. Can you guess what it is? If you guessed ice yellow, you are right. But I'm joking you guys, it was sunny skin tone. Okay? Papa Laborc is so funny. Anyway, apply it on the finger and knuckles that are facing up. Add some more sunny skin tone. If you guys are old enough, you can probably make a drinking game out of this video and take a shot every time Papa Laborc uses sunny skin tone. Anyway, apply it over super small sections with a thin consistency. Okay, at this part I forgot to highlight the pistol, so I used the exact same steps I did with the pants, and there is some sunny skin tone involved. Alright, let's cover all the metal parts with the dark sea blue with a base layer consistency. Mix some medium sea grey to the dark sea blue and sketch out the highlight areas on the blade and the barrel. The barrel is a cylinder, so we just need some straight lines on it. And the dagger is quite small, so we are just going to make a small gradient on the middle section of the blade. To blend in the color, apply some glazes and make it easier with some stippling. After that, use medium sea grey to reduce the highlight areas further. This color will be easier to blend in because it's a smaller step-in value compared to the previous one, so if you layer it in with a thin consistency, you'll be fine and dandy. Okay guys, leave a comment if you guessed the paint I mixed into the medium sea grey to push the contrast. No worries, I'll wait. Okay, got it? Write it down. You have time. I need to change granite black sheets anyway. So, okay, if you guessed Ghost Blaster Green, it's wrong, unfortunately. It was Sunny Skin Tone. Let's add more of that shiny orange skin tone to the mix and use a thicker consistency to do some crispy edge highlights. This mini is not even half bad when it comes to the edges, so it's really worth the time to add that extra detail. Okay, for the coat, we are using rhinox hide. Leave around 30% of the folds that face down black. I use thin layers and paint the boots as well with this color. Let's add some medium sea grey to the rhinox hide and sketch out the highlights. Use the highlight reference pictures for the back to make it easy peasy granny's butt cheek squeezy. Paint all the edges with some thinner lines, but this time a little bit thicker consistency works as well. Continue the process with medium sea grey. Add some texture with stippling to those highlights. The finer the stippling, the less glazing you need to blend in the color. You can also create small lines to add a variety to the textures. Go over some of the edges again, and most importantly, enjoy the process, okay? These Darkest Dungeon minis are really fun to paint because all the details are quite big. Nice bulky folds are really easy to paint. I don't know why, but this was my favorite mini to paint from the game so far. Now the moment you've been all waiting for. Reduce the highlight areas more and continue with the stippling process. Make sure that you add more highlights toward the chest and less around the lower half of the miniature. This will ensure that the focal point will stay on the head, once we paint the head of course. Go around all the edges on the pouches and collars of the coat and use a thicker consistency for that. On the boots, only edge highlight the one that steps forward. The other boot is covered in a shadow, so it makes sense to leave it darker. Now add a bit more sunny skin tone and focus on the edges and tiny highlights. I also blend in these highlights with some glazes, but if you like your highlights a bit rougher, then just leave them as such, okay? Okay. To add some warmth to these desaturated drapes, I apply a few very thin layers of iyanden yellow glaze, but any nice yellow color could work. Seriously guys, this is super thin. You can just barely notice the first coat, okay? Don't go Mickey Mouse and use a super thick yellow and ruin your highlights, because I will slap on your tiny hand. And I also apply this glaze around the face to the other parts of the miniature as well. Alright, let's start working on the face. I use burnt red as the base layer. Nice reddish brown, which is great for the shadows. Leave some of that lower crevices black, but on the forehead you can cover everything with this color. Let's mix some cadian fleshtone to it and sketch the major highlights. Cover around 70% with this layer. Make sure you use thin layers so you will have an easier time blending the colors. I leave those big wrinkles on the face darker so I won't end up with some really young looking fella in the process. Reduce the highlight areas with pure cadian fleshtone. Thin consistency, and we build up the layers nice and slow until they are nice and opaque, as Granny's grey cataract, you know guys. The major highlight areas on the face that we want to build upon are the nose, eyebrows, cheeks, forehead and upper part of the mouth. Guys, if you can guess in the comments which color I'm going to mix to the cadian fleshtone, I will send you a JPEG picture of my sunny skin tone dropper bottle, okay? Okay. Now focus around the eyes with these highlights, because normally the eyes would be a brightest part on the face. Since these Darkest Dungeon minis would be super weird with an eye, we emphasize the eye holes, which are a bit creepy, but Papa Laborc really loves it. To have a nice stubble effect around the mouth, glaze some dark sea blue. Stop your brushstroke in a shadowy part and not over the highlights. So this way you will end up with a super nice stubble effect. For the hair, I covered 80% of the surface with burnt red. It felt like it's been ages since I used sunny skin tones, so I mixed some of it to the burnt red and highlighted the locks on the hair. Where I felt like the highlights are too big, I glazed back some burnt red. I wasn't happy with the dagger, so I used some ivory to push the contrast and make some edge highlights. I had the same feeling for the fur, so I mixed some ivory to the medium sea grey and painted some of the hairy parts around the face. Okay, lastly, there is a super cool highlight color in general. I don't know if you guys heard about it. It's called Sunny Skin Tone. So I used some thin layers and pushed the contrast even more on the furry parts. With that, the Highwayman is done and ready for the table. Please tell me your thoughts about it in the comment section and let me know what brand of Sunny Skin Tone is your favorite. So thank you for joining me on this little painting adventure. A huge thanks to my patrons who support this kind of videos, with special shout out to Jonathan Rhodes, Cold-Blooded Dom, Trying to Paint Minis, Jonathan Mosner, Rulzak, Vlad T, Earthapple21, One Sharp Joe Crafts, Glitchy Macrash, and Guillaume Belanger. If you want to support the work of Papa Laborc, you can do that on Patreon, where you will have early access to these videos and you can vote on the next mini. Or if you need a little bit of extra help, online coaching is also available. I hope the rest of your day will be as smooth as a granny's butt cheek.